Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video where today we will be discussing who will be the main character in the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings on Prime TV series. It's a very interesting discussion that we haven't on this channel yet fully dived into. So we'll be looking at 5 characters and I'll be making an argument for each one. Then at the end you guys can decide which character should be the main character in Amazon's Lord of the Rings TV series. Without further ado, let's get into the first character, with that character being Keller Brimble. For sure, whether or not he will be the main character, Keller Brimble will have a pivotal role in the show nonetheless, due to his direct involvement in the events of the Forging of the Rings. But the question is, can Keller Brimble go from a pivotal / supporting character role to the main role in the Amazon show? Well, Keller Brimble along with Originz takes center stage in the conflict between the elves and Anatar, with Anatar even trying to befriend the Great Imogen, which Keller Brimble was the leader of. If we are seeing the events from around the year 1200 of the Second Age, then it can be argued that you can make Keller Brimble the main character. During this time, he was the Lord of Originz, and directly had contact with Sauron, who was disguised as Anatar, which means this all depends on which story arc and region will be the main storyline in the show. If the events of Anatar deceiving the elves in Originz and directly Keller Brimble by forging the secret, the One Ring of Power, then showing the conflicted character of Keller Brimble during these events would create an interesting lead to the show. The other runners being Elwen, Galadriel, Sauron, etc., who are already established characters in Tolkien's live action world, they wouldn't need as much building up than as a character like Keller Brimble, who out of those 3 characters on screen has never been seen before. Therefore, putting an unseen before but pivotal character in the story of the Second Age like Keller Brimble would give Tolkien fans and casual fans a look at a brand new and fresh character that would be the center point for the show. We know that Keller Brimble is a conflicted character, firstly being the last of the House of Feanor and being a great craftsman, but then spoilers, meeting this never seen before Anatar, quote, the Lord of Gifts, who teaches him and his craftsmen great ring making techniques, but then gets betrayed by this Anatar, and then finding out that all along it was in fact Sauron the Dark Lord under his nose the entire time. From a basic overview here, you can see glimpses of a great character arc, and in fact a tragic character, which would be a compelling lead for the show. Finally, if we do see the fall of Originz in the show, Keller Brimble leads the final defense of Os Edad, which was the capital of Originz, before everything gets taken away from him, with the fall of Originz happening after the defense failed. So overall, if Originz for the first few seasons is the main location and storyline for the show, then Keller Brimble could easily be the main vocal point for the show, as the events in Originz directly involved and especially impact him. Sauron will definitely be the main villain for the show, and potentially his main rival or directly opposing character in the events of the show is in fact Keller Brimble. However, what drawbacks are there of making Keller Brimble the main character of the Amazon show? Well, the main reason is that, spoiler alert, he eventually dies, and most likely quite before the show itself ends. So, do you make your main character die within the first 2 seasons? Well, in television there are good and conflicting examples. Of course, the first one being Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, who was built up to be the main character but then died at the end of season 1. But however, ultimately for Game of Thrones they were able to clearly recover, and it worked out quite well for them. You could also build the case that Keller Brimble and Ned Stark are potentially similar tragic characters, as both had true intentions in mind but then end up being betrayed, with Ned Stark a Littlefinger and Keller Brimble and Anatar. But we are moving away a little, so let's get back to the main point. A bad example of this is Vikings, and the main character Ragnar Lothbrok getting killed off in the 4th season of the show. After this event, the show clearly went downhill and the viewerships dropped dramatically, and this was directly due to the death of Ragnar as it could be argued that the show wasn't as interesting anymore without his presence as main character. This could also be a risk for Amazon if they make Brimble the main character but then cut the main vocal point off, as this could have a damaging effect for the future of the show. Another reason is that, do you make a tragic character the main character of the show? Generally, you don't see tragic characters or conflicted characters be the main vocal points of shows, as it'd be hard for viewers to get a picture of the reality of the situation and events of the show if it is seen through a tragic character, as it often be thwarted. That is why generally in shows, the main characters or the main things that you see the events happen through is normally the more stable and heroic characters generally. Now, the next character that we're going to be looking at is Galadriel. The Observer a few years ago reported this, quote, "Interestingly, sources tell The Observer that the true main character in Amazon's blockbuster Lord of the Rings TV series is Elwen. She is described as a complex, unique, and formidable young woman in her mid-20s who possesses an eternal quality and a strong physical component. Negotiations are said to be underway for this role." This Elwen character is 99% referring to Galadriel, the role that is now Morfydd Clark's. Well, it looks like this Elwen character, which of course is a codename, is going to be the main character according to The Observer. So why should Galadriel be the main character? Well, firstly, a reason away from the story itself is for why Galadriel should be the main character, from especially Amazon's point of view, is that it will be a female protagonist. Of course, now in Hollywood it seems like having women in important roles is increasing, and having Galadriel as the main character would be the perfect option for Amazon. But away from those business decisions, Galadriel is an already established and well-known character from both the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit adaptations. So, for casual viewers and actual Tolkien fans, she would be easily a compelling and suitable lead character. Tolkien even said that Galadriel was one of the most powerful elves and was a direct match to the men around her. Having a powerful character like her to oppose the powerful villain of Sauron, who is a Maya, would create a good dynamic for the show. Also, regarding Anata and the events of the Forging of the Rings, Galadriel actually, unlike most, did not trust this Anata, which already backs my previous point about her being more knowledgeable, which shows that she would be a capable main character. This would be a good decision story-wise and lore-wise, but also business-wise for Amazon as well. The next character we will be looking at is in fact someone completely different and potentially might be a far reach, but that is Anata, aka Sauron. So, before everyone says he will be the main villain etc, which of course is completely correct and why this shout may be quite far-fetched, but unlike most villains in shows and television, he isn't a pure and direct villain in the Second Age, well, at least from the year 1200, as he is in the form of Anata, the Lord of Gifts, who I believed I have mentioned for about the third time in this video now, as he is directly involved with a lot of characters like Brimble, Galadriel etc. This would be a big risk for Amazon, but if they had the confidence to go for it and it gets pulled off successfully, then this would be revolutionary for the small screen, with successfully being able to make your eventual main villain the main overall character of the show. This would all happen when he is in fact the form of Anata. For the entire show he doesn't have to be the main character, but if we are seeing the events of the creation of the rings and of Anata in the first few seasons, you could make Anata the main character until he makes the One Ring and publicly reveals himself as Sauron. The problem is for Amazon, how do you make a hidden villain the main character without showing their true intentions and being able to deceive your viewers for a few seasons? Of course, I am referring to Anata and how Amazon will be able to make him the main and vocal character without showing his true and deceiving intentions. And this is based on the presumption that we won't know Anata is Sauron, which also starts the debate, will we know that Anata is Sauron, or would that be hidden from the viewer and then it be made a surprise later on in the show? I am sure there is a way, which is why there are many talented writers working on the show who would probably have a solution, but also at the same time I can see the difficulties. The penultimate character that we'll be looking at in today's video is Elwen. Well, Elwen, presumably being played by Robert Aramayo, will be one of the more well-known characters by casual fans and also by Tolkien fans who have only seen a certain number of Tolkien characters adapted on screen. So, why should Elwen be the main character? Well, similarly to Galadriel, Elwen would have been a well-known character to casual fans, which would easily make it a safe bet for Amazon. Also, we know that during the start of the Second Age, he was Gilgalad's lieutenant and potential understudy. But the main reason for Elwen being the main character is that throughout most of the Second Age, he's directly involved with a lot of the main events. If you want to see connections with Numenor, when Eldarion visited Lindon for some time earlier in the Second Age, Elwen would have been there, so there is your link to Numenor. And also we know that his brother in fact was Elros Tarminiata, the first king of Numenor, but that's besides the point. Also, during the fall of Originz, he was the head of a force sent by Gilgalad to help save Originz, but were eventually too late. Then, during the War of the Elves and Sauron, he led many forces as mentioned earlier with the fall of Originz, and we all know what happened in the Battle of the Last Alliance at the end of the Second Age. So, what are the drawbacks? Well, these events are quite spread apart, with some having hundreds and thousands of years between them. So, for Elwen between each of these events, not much really happens, as at the start of the Second Age, he would spend most of his time in Lindon. Also, according to the Observer, which gave, as I referenced earlier, which had some of the character descriptions, it said, quote, Poulter is said to be playing Beldor, an optimistic, intelligent and political savvy protagonist who is nonetheless more reserved than his on-screen counterparts. Beldor will often be the straight man in pairings and more outsized personalities, and while young will possess a gravitas that belies a character who could be far older. Of course, now we know that Poulter is no longer involved with the show, and this role is now gone to Robert Aramayo, and we could tell originally that Will Poulter was going to be playing Elrond, and now Robert Aramayo has taken his role, so we can now presume that Robert Aramayo will be playing this Beldor character, which is in fact Elrond. The other front runner I could see, but I think is least likely, is Gilgalad the High King. We know he ruled Lindon, and technically politically wise was the most powerful, but the problem with Gilgalad is that you don't normally make the rulers or kings the main characters of shows, but instead have the viewer see the rule and actions of this king and ruler through another character perspective. This other perspective could easily be Elrond, but also someone else as well. Also, Gilgalad doesn't really get into much of the action until near the end of the Second Age, around the events of the War of the Last Alliance. Often he is sending forces and other characters down to resolve the issues, for example during the fall of Originz, but also at the same time he was there and he actually in fact sent a letter to Numenor and to Tar Minelda, and I believe Eldarion sent this message, so there is your connection between Middle-earth and Numenor, which may be a reason why you want Gilgalad to be the main character, as you physically have a way to connect Middle-earth and Numenor. So that's all the main frontrunners covered. You can probably tell that I haven't included any Numenor characters or Numenorians, and I will be leaving that for a separate video, so that's why. But overall, I personally want and believe that Brimble would be a great main character, as it would be something different on screen that we haven't seen from any of Tolkien's adaptations works so far, and it'll be interesting to see potentially a tragic character as the main character. But I can of course see the drawbacks to Brimble at the same time, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So what do I believe Amazon would do? I believe they would probably go for Galadriel, which isn't a bad shout either, and according to The Observer, this Eldian character is said to be the main character. The fact that she is the most well-known character excluding Sauron, and that business-wise for Amazon it would be a female lead, having Galadriel as the main character is my most likely bet. But let me know in the comments below who you want the main character to be, and then who you think the main character is most likely going to be. I hope you enjoyed this little analysis. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, but until the next video my friends, goodbye.